This is Still Enrolled.
And welcome on into the latest edition of Still Enrolled, a Big Ten football podcast. As always, Ryan Hickey and Brian Tripp with you here. We got a loaded show for you. Nico Iamaleava, last time we talked, reportedly going to UCLA. Now it is official. How does his addition change the UCLA win total for 2025? We will break it down. We have some spring portal updates. We got some spring portal or spring football game reactions, I should say, as Michigan and Indiana did complete their quote-unquote, we'll call it spring game over the weekend that we'll react to. We have a very controversial college football playoff format idea that is starting to gain some steam that we'll tell you about. And also we're going to play a fun game here at the end of Spring It or Fling It, as CBS Sports released some ideas Nebraska had to replace their spring game with. We'll discuss which ideas could work, which are total disasters. So a loaded pod here. Tripp, what's going on, man?
Is Spring It or Fling It? Is that because it's cuffing? Is it cuffing season officially now? I know you're not a part of that anymore. I can't wait to actually talk college football, talk spring football. What's left of this iteration of spring football? Could this be? Now, Michigan's spring game had 40,000 people at it, which to me, like Penn State's this weekend. And as we know, I'm on the Penn State radio broadcast team. And still not sure here as of Tuesday at 11:38 a.m. Eastern time, what the format is even going to be of that spring game. Could this be the last year we actually see spring football? That's a question that I have coming out of this weekend. But Michigan, to see Bryce Underwood, 40,000 people at their spring game, despite overcast, dreary, cloudy, kind of cold. Like, that tells you what the buzz is right now for Michigan. And it's also, you didn't even mention it, you basically hit on every single story in all of college football in your monologue to open the podcast. It is NFL draft week as well.
That it is, and we're going to have a special pod for you here coming out this week as well, as we're going to talk with Emory Hunt, tremendous NFL draft analyst for CBS Sports. He's going to join us on a separate pod this week, so keep an eye out. That's why we always say subscribe, but this is why it's super important to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your pods. Just type in Still Enrolled. We are there wherever you consume your content, because that will be a release on today's Wednesday morning here, as Emory will get you set to kind of look out for some of the Big Ten prospects here in 2025, but also maybe keep an eye on, if you're an NFL draft junkie, on prospects here in the conference to watch out for in 2026 as well. So that conversation, Emory, will be released Wednesday morning. So yeah, Tripp, you're right. This is a loaded week here.
I don't know how you keep your schedule straight, because we've recorded on different days now. We're releasing, we're not as regular and consistent as we have been during the college football regular season. That's because you're juggling day shifts, night shifts on national radio and CBS Sports Radio. You're everywhere. You are everywhere in New York. I'm everywhere right now. Hockey, baseball, college football. I'm not sure. Do you use the calendar on your phone to keep your schedule straight? Or do you have are you still like a handwritten calendar? I saw you squeeze some time in for a fresh fade, and you've got like the high top really flowing today. How do you keep everything aligned with your busy schedule, living there in the hoity-toity Upper East Side of New York City?
I love the calendar app, Google Calendar, because that's a little bit more, translates better, and for me, get more reminders. And I also have an old school calendar, magnetic, on my fridge that I like to look at, because the phone, you have to open up the app, right, to see the alerts. But I like to see things in my view.
It's interesting because before we started recording, you had your camera pointed that way towards the fridge. And for some reason, it says dishes and laundry on there for today.
A lot to do. I got bills to pay today. I got laundry piling up. Did you do your you did remember to do your taxes, right? Well, yes.
How many 1099s, W-2s did you have?
Not many. I just work at one here, and this is in the Odyssey umbrella. So for me, it's you're the man who come tax time here. You're in trouble.
I had 9
forms. Oh my God. That's taxes are hard enough doing one filing.
Almost as many schools as Nico and his brother have been at over the last couple of weeks.
That's true. You are right about that. As we officially got the word, Tripp, Nico Iamaleava is coming to UCLA. And how about this? In a twist of fate, maybe we should have seen it coming. On Monday night, his brother also now decommits, or I guess enters the transfer portal, leaves Arkansas, and now is also joining Nico at UCLA. So a 2-for-1, if you will, Tripp. UCLA kind of, I guess, trying to do what Oregon did last year in getting Dylan Gabriel out of the portal for the present and then getting Dante Moore for the future. UCLA doing the same thing here. Nico for the present, Madden for the future. That's an interesting strategy to double down on a family that has caused a lot of chaos here in college football over the last 10 days or so. Well, let me ask you this, Trip, especially since the last pod we did the win totals on, we did not get your thoughts on. UCLA's win total is 4.5 according to most sports books. I saw one take it up to 5.5 after this move, but for the most part, they have stayed the same at 4.5. How does Nico's addition now as a starting quarterback for the Bruins impact how you look at UCLA here in 2025?
Yeah, it's interesting because they did have the transfer coming in from Appalachian State at quarterback in Joey Aguilar, who is a fairly accomplished quarterback, not playing to the success or the hype that Iamaleava had playing at Tennessee in the SEC. And I think we spent enough time on this ridiculous topic on the last podcast, going through his stats at Tennessee, where he succeeded, where he struggled. Still a young quarterback, right? Playing at that level. And I think we've spent a lot of time discussing, we'll talk about it again today, the guys like a Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, Bryce Underwood coming up this year for Michigan. How does a Julian Sayin, if he is the guy in Columbus, how do those young players translate to the college level? Like, there's going to be ups and downs when you're riding a young guy. Look, there's no question he's really talented. You don't get to be really talented and be the starting quarterback on a college football playoff team out of the SEC, even if the numbers weren't always there. And I thought the SEC this past year leaned more defense-oriented than offense-oriented than maybe in past seasons. Look, I think there's always been some really good defensive teams. Obviously, Georgia for the last couple of years with Kirby Smart comes to mind. But I thought the conference as a whole had a lot more talent on the defensive side than the offensive side of the football. And even in the biggest games in the Big Ten, right? This past season, I think the Oregon game's an outlier because of how their defense played or struggled in their biggest games against Ohio State and Penn State. And then obviously what happened in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. I think even the Big Ten's biggest games, you look at what Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State, when they went head to head, more often than not, Michigan, whatever you want to make of Michigan, Nebraska, right? Illinois, Minnesota, the bigger games in the Big Ten, even featuring teams like Penn State and Ohio State that had top 5, top 10 offenses in all of college football, those games tended to lean more defense. So maybe that's the way the sport still is, even with all the attention and scoring that's put on the offensive side of the football. You know, long story short, I think he certainly is a talented addition. And I don't see it, though, moving the win total needle a ton just because of their schedule, what else they return, where they're at as a program. That said, does he take them from a 4 or a 5 win team to a bowl eligible team? I think he's got the potential to do that. I know I wasn't like super crazy about the move. I think this story's gotten a lot of national attention because it's coming in an off-season window right before the NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs start. The draft isn't here yet. College football has changed so much that this topic is under a microscope. The way it was handled by him and his family is different, but he's not the only case like we talked about on the last pod. He's just the most public and high profile of the cases of individuals doing this, perhaps with the most notoriety towards the finances that are actually known in this instance. But again, by far and away, not the only guy going through this. So yeah, I think to answer your question, in a very long-winded way, he moves the win total up, maybe a bowl, like a 6-7 win season for UCLA, but a lot more plays into it than just his addition. I think he's a good addition for the Bruins. They need a spark for their program. There's some baggage there, but it might be worth the risk to try to move the needle in Los Angeles in a program that needs to move the needle. But it's a program that had some positive momentum, shockingly, coming out of last season, the way it started. And love it or hate it, no matter how you feel about all the attention and everything that's going on with this case, there's no question, like, this is a starting quarterback on a college football playoff team last year. So I do think it's a good addition. We talked last time where he ranked among the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Is he 1, 2, 3? No, probably not. But does he fall right in that next pack where there's a lot of unknowns, but a lot of potential? Sure. So yeah, I do ultimately like the move. I think there's just so much more discourse that comes along with it than just, okay, what's the win total for UCLA? And that's kind of why I give a long answer there.
And when you look at, right, like I agree with the potential because he has a lot of talent. but also we haven't seen him fully mature and fully show that talent when he's at Tennessee. So when you look at like what he could accomplish, yeah, I think he could make UCLA a bowl team. He could rise up and be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten here in 2025. But like, at least in my mind, when you look at kind of win total projection, okay, what do you think will happen? Forget what could happen. What will happen? When I look at that number 4.5 trip, I'm not like I said under. We did the win totals a few weeks ago. I'm not changing. I'm still sticking with under. Number one, when you look at Nico last year, Tennessee, this is a guy that when Tennessee truly needed him the most, he could not step up. And he had, one of the best running backs in all of the SEC and all of college football, and Dylan Sampson. The guy had 22 rushing touchdowns. He had a solid offensive line in front of him. He had some decent receivers. And still with that talent and good coaching around him, you still saw him struggle against some really good defenses and some really big moments.
Yep.
And so now you look at him going over to UCLA, where they lose their top running back in TJ Harden, who transfers to SMU. You look at 4 of the top 5 receivers for UCLA have either graduated, entered the draft, or have transferred. So you're looking at 2 of the most important pieces that Nico had play at a high level last year that are now, you're almost bereft of talent or have a lot of unproven talent for UCLA this year. And again, for a guy that struggled in some big moments, you look at UCLA's schedule, I think you could say the guaranteed wins for them. UNLV, I feel pretty good about them winning. New Mexico, I feel pretty good about them winning. I would say even with Nico, guaranteed losses. Penn State, Ohio State, I would say at USC is a really tough game for UCLA to win. Utah, I think, is going to be a really tough team, physical team. They're going to be healthier this year than they were last year. Nebraska is going to be tough, and I think Washington, I'm very high on. So if we look at it, they have 2 guaranteed wins, and you look at the toss-ups here. I think Maryland's a toss-up game. At Northwestern's a toss-up game. At Michigan State, toss-up game. At Indiana, toss-up game. To just get 5 wins in that stretch of Maryland, Northwestern, Michigan State, Indiana, you got to go 3-1 bare minimum. I know they had momentum last year. There's a lot of coaching turnover, and I'm excited about Tino Sinceri getting added as their OC, replacing Eric Bieniemy. But for a guy that struggled, even with a lot of talent around him in some big games that Tennessee really needed him to, for me to sit here and say, oh, okay, well, he couldn't come through last year, but now on a lesser talented team facing, some still high-level talent in the Big Ten, for me to expect and believe he can come through this year, I got to see it to believe it. So that's why even when you look at the 4.5 win total number trip, even though I'm with you, I think it's a good move for UCLA. This is the most talented quarterback they could have gotten in 2025. I just don't think, because the questions I have around him, along with questions about his ability to step up when a team needs him most, I don't think that win total projection for me, at least, is changing pre-Nico and now post-Nico.
I do have some questions about your guaranteed losses versus guaranteed wins and guaranteed toss-ups, but that's probably neither here nor there for this podcast. Do you have anything else to add on Nico? I feel like we've pretty much covered this story as extensively as we could the last pod and a half.
The thing I'm interested in, because these two are going to be tied at the hip all season long in 2025, is how Joey Aguilar, who now they just flip-flop, and now he goes to Tennessee, how he performs. When you look at like financially as well, because I think that's also now obviously a huge part of this conversation, Nico is making reportedly less at UCLA than he was making at Tennessee initially. He was making 2.2, 1 and 4. He's apparently reportedly making less at UCLA than even the 2.2 he's making at Tennessee. And Joey Aguilar reportedly is making just about the same at UCLA or at Tennessee as he was at UCLA. So that's kind of a discounting feel for Tennessee. You mentioned Aguilar is a proven guy. He has proven at App State, has put up some big numbers there in his 2 years there. He is less talented, his ceiling is lower, but I think the immediate production for a more talented team around him, I think the big winner, even though we just talked about UCLA, I think getting the most talented quarterback they have, when you look at situation, I think the biggest winner out of this entire situation is Aguilar. Going from UCLA now to a playoff caliber team in Tennessee, the spotlight's going to be on both. I think he's in a better position to win in terms of talent around him, coaches, system. I'm very excited to see. I think it's going to be a storyline we're going to revisit a lot here as how both are playing. That's one where I think Aguilar, even though he's the forgotten man in all of this, it could be the big winner when it's all said and done in 2025.
In college football, the players have all of the power right now, unquestionably. And it's changed because previously I think the coaches had all of the power and they could leave whenever they wanted, and players typically could not.
Right.
With these players being paid, and I think there's a debate where they're essentially employees versus essentially not employees, and where does the compensation come from? Should we have trades in college football? Because that's essentially what we had.
I mean, I don't hate it. Yeah, I mean, I think it like at this point, I think the more you make it professional with contracts to schools, trades.
And if you're Tennessee, and like you have a budget, right? Like money in college football, it seems like money grows on trees today, but ultimately all that money has to come from somewhere. And I think you'll see it in Olympic sports, schools that aren't basketball schools. They may cut, like, what of your revenue share are you going to allot to football? What of your NIL are you going to allot to football versus basketball? What do you give to your other non-revenue and Olympic sports? Ultimately, Tennessee traded their quarterback for UCLA's quarterback and probably saved 7 figures on the deal to allot to other positions on their roster. And whether that's keeping a player, keeping a different player happy, making a move because you have the financial resources to go and get and I'm just throwing this out there, go and get a starting cornerback instead. Like, that's essentially what the trade was. It was a cap cutting cost by Tennessee to UCLA for their quarterback. Yeah, I don't think you'll ever see trades. I don't think they're ever going to be specifically defined as employees in college football. Then you'd have to have, it basically is a minor league system right now, as is. It's far from the amateur model it once was when the NCAA was in firm control. They've lost complete control of the sport. But we essentially had a trade between UCLA and Tennessee for their quarterbacks.
The one thing I want to add to that, I think it's fascinating because I think college football, right? You look at the NFL and the old saying is true. You need a quarterback to have a chance, right? You look at the Super Bowl champions of recent years. Jalen Hurts was great. Patrick Mahomes is great. Like, if you don't have a great quarterback, you really don't have a chance to win a championship. I don't think that's the case in college football. Like, I wouldn't say Will Howard was the best quarterback in college football last year. We saw Jaden Daniels win the Heisman Trophy for LSU 2 years ago. They didn't even sniff the playoff. Like, I do think college football, you could still win without having a top 2, 3, 4 quarterback in the sport, where it's a lot harder to do that in the NFL. And so I wonder, to your point of just like Tennessee cap cutting, right? Essentially is what they're doing. But like you said, you can now spread the money around to whether maybe they make a big transfer portal ad. Not that the spring transfer portal has a lot of guys, but maybe you use that money you saved to maybe get a guy that now, so we have the budget to go get this guy, let's go do it. Or say, keep a guy happy, or maybe save it for next year and either keep a guy from the draft, get a guy, like whatever it may be. I think it does make more sense in college football to spend less on a quarterback that at least you don't believe in, or is not one of the top 2, 3, 4 guys. And I think it does help you get closer to a national title than the NFL, where you need a quarterback to have any sort of chance.
What a perfect transition to the Michigan spring game, where Jay Underwood told the Wall Street Journal that his son, Bryce Underwood, is expected to make more than $15 million during his time at Michigan.
We were blown away when the number was 12 initially. Some nice escalators in there. Not too shabby, huh?
So he makes his debut. He's obviously only been on campus for a couple of months, but as highly talented a quarterback prospect as perhaps there's ever been, especially with the financial resources that have been tied up in him at the collegiate level. He went 12 for 27, 186 yards, a touchdown, interception, led the offense to 17 points. Was it the maize team or the blue team that won? That's what I thought. And then they had a fumble and a couple of sacks, right? Look, he's only been there a couple of months. And I think from what I've read, was able to see through highlights and parts of the clips that were posted online, you can see the talent, right? He's mobile. He had a couple of times where he escaped a collapsing pocket. He's got a big arm, but he's going to have to translate that arm into the college game. He's exactly what you would expect. A super talented young quarterback that comes with a lot of hype and a lot of expectations, who's going to be far from perfect in a spring game. He had the 88-yard touchdown pass on the reverse little flea flicker back to him, and that was a highlight. And he threw some darts to guys, but he also made a lot of mistakes. And I think it's the perfect, like, not too high, not too low. There's no reason to overreact. It's great that 40,000 people were out there to see him. And it is what it is, right? It was his debut. And what more are you going to make of it?
The one thing that I'm fascinated by, because we're not going to sit here and break down spring performance and have that project to the fall. I agree with you in the sense of like wasting time there.
If this was First Take, they would.
Well, they also somehow fit LeBron James in there as well, and try to get that involved. So we're not going to do that. We promise you.
What's the latest on the First Take Shannon Sharp? Like, I think there was some news that came.
Oh my god! Oh man, you're making me laugh so much. My holy cow, you are funny. Brian Tripp After Dark, everyone. It is lunchtime as we record this, but it may as well be Brian Tripp After Dark.
What I'd be concerned about is Shannon Sharp After Dark.
Wow. You are. I mean, look, I don't disagree. That is.
Let me read a quote while you compose yourself. Here's what Sherrone Moore said on the quarterback competition at Michigan. He said it's going to be a battle all the way through fall camp. And that's Mikey Keene, the transfer from Fresno State, following the offensive coordinator there. Jaden Davis, the incumbent, okay, and Bryce Underwood. And Moore said Underwood played well in the spring and in the spring game. And, there were also, I was reading an ESPN article about it. There were a couple of quotes from Underwood. Really a humble kid. Like, he said that he's going to have to earn it. He recognizes that it's not his job, even though so he's saying all the right things. I think he's doing all the right things. And I think if you're a Michigan fan, you're not going to agonize over the performance. You're not going to agonize over a spring practice, right? It seems like they're on the right track to getting this guy to where they want him to be when August rolls around.
I agree. I do think they'll have to make a decision what they want 2025 to be. And that's what my biggest takeaway from this is, because they have two paths, right? They could try to win as many games in 2025, which I think if that's the case, while Underwood is your future and I think more talented than Mikey Keene is much more consistent. And when you look at that road trip to Oklahoma in week number 2, I would say right now his composure, his experience, the consistency probably gives you a better chance to win that game versus the up and down nature of Underwood. So if you're Michigan, do you want to decide, okay, are we going to try to just go for it here, maybe try to make a playoff run, win 10 games, and just maximize 2025? If that's the case, expect Mikey Keene to start, maybe not finish the year, but play a good majority of the year. Oh.
I just want to interrupt really quick, though. And I remember we talked about this once before. In the new playoff model, though, what Bryce Underwood is on August 30th or September 5th or September 12th could be a lot different than what he is in November, December. And you don't have to be perfect anymore to make it through a college football regular season and be a national champion. Ohio State proved that. You can be far from perfect, in fact. So, playing devil's advocate to your point, can you live with, how do you spot him in? Is it a drive here or there? Is it a package for him? Or is it give him the reins, knowing that his ceiling is so high? Look at what we could be, figuring you're only going to have him for 3 years anyway. Look at what we could be in November, December, as now he's got 13 starts under his belt, 12 starts under his belt, versus what is the ceiling? And they'll figure that out. What is the ceiling with Mikey Keene? But that's the devil's advocate point that I think you have to consider here, where you no longer have to be 12-0, 11-1. Their schedule, win a big game here or there, maybe you have a hiccup. It's okay, because that's college football 2025.
Yes, I would say the floor for being a true contender is 10-2. Now again, that Oklahoma game I think will really kind of decide the trajectory. Ohio State's obviously tough. I had some tough games on the schedule. But to your point, if you say, okay, we're going to roll out Bryce Underwood here in 2025, or we're going to kind of ride the roller coaster, because really outside of Trevor Lawrence, we've not seen a true freshman quarterback come in, play like a seasoned vet, not have some ups, not have some downs. So I think you can expect, some great performances, maybe overplays and wins a game they shouldn't, and then maybe lose a game they shouldn't either, because he's just, again, going through the true freshman learning curve and growing pains. If I'm Michigan, I would rather ride the roller coaster in 2025 and kind of almost, hey, look, maybe if he plays well, gets hot at the end, we can sneak into the playoff and have this be a bonus. But then at least you feel good about going to 2026, 2027. Okay, he's polished. He kind of got the hiccups out of the way. We're going to refine his game and go to 2026 and kind of go full gear, full bore into making a title run. I'd rather do that than try to maximize 2025 play Mikey Keene half the year, a month even, and then kind of insert slowly Underwood. I'm not sure that's the best for his development. But I think that is a question for Michigan here, even with the expanded playoff. Like, it's still 10-2 is still tough to do. And you're still talking about for Michigan, the regular season, winning 3 or 4, or at least 3, I should say, regular season games more than you did last year. I think it's going to be tough. But I think that's a decision you have to make if you're Michigan.
I don't think it's black and white the way you're putting it. I think you can have I think you can have both and achieve the results that you desire. I don't think it's as black and white as that.
I guess the only thing for me is just, if you want to have it both ways, you're going to have to you're asking and relying on your freshman quarterback to do something we haven't really seen that much. And that's, again, if you want to expect that, he has the hype, to do it. But that's, I think, partly of what should be at least your calculus. If you're Michigan of, hey, we're going to play Bryce Underwood for week number 1, and we're also expect to make a playoff spot.
Yeah.
You're asking him to do something we haven't seen before, at least haven't seen maybe that frequently, I should say, in college football. All right, Trip, let's also quickly hit on Indiana. I think one other thing I want to hit about their quarterback and Fernando Mendoza, who had their spring showcase. Not much takeaway, but I think it is interesting when you hear some of the takeaways about the spring showcase, but also spring practice. He brings mobility more than Curtis Rourke brought to the team last year. And Curtis Rourke was a really good quarterback, made quick decisions, accurate. But now if you can get Mendoza to have those qualities, which so far, everything we've seen from Cal and everything you heard out of Indiana so far in spring practice, he has those qualities, accuracy, decision-making. He's played a lot of football. But now you bring the mobility. So we're not only can he just run, right, and extend the drive, run for a first down, but also scramble to throw, keep your eyes down the field, give a guy like Elijah Surratt, a second chance going deep because you can flush out and roll out. We saw Indiana's offensive line might be a real detriment in the 2 biggest games of the season for Hoosiers last year, and Rourke got crushed against Notre Dame and against Ohio State. Now you bring a mobile quarterback there that can maybe evade some of that pressure, keep plays alive that Rourke couldn't. I'm excited to see what Indiana's offense can do here in 2025, Trip.
And I think it's not just their offense. And a couple guys that didn't play in this spring game, Aiden Fisher, Mikhail Kamara, like their defense returns enough pieces. And I think throughout the course of that 2024 season, everyone wanted to talk about the offense and Curt Cignetti, and rightfully so, right? But again, their defense was really, really good. And if Love doesn't break one super long run in that playoff game, that game might have a different dynamic too. I know you can't just erase a 98-yard touchdown run from a playoff game, but that defense is pretty good and returns a lot. So I think this is a lot different, certainly than Nico going into UCLA. And maybe even Bryce Underwood being expected to carry the day for Michigan a lot of ways offensively. You mentioned the wide receivers, Surratt, Jackson. They're going to be able to run the ball. Curt Cignetti team always can. But they also return a lot of key pieces on the defensive side. I think in terms of like spring reaction here for Indiana, if this adds an extra dimension to their offense, great. Is he going to be as efficient and effective as Curtis Rourke? Not sure. That's very tough to duplicate. But Indiana returns enough where Mendoza doesn't have to be a star. I don't know that anyone's expecting to be a superstar coming in, but he's a very quality pickup, one of the top pickups in the portal window. And I think they've got the pieces around him also to be a really good football team going into the fall.
And that's what made Indiana so successful last year is they could beat you in different ways, right? They can win a slugfest. They can win running the ball. They could win passing the ball. They return a lot. Now the schedule gets harder. That's why, it does make it tougher to make a repeat cultural playoff run. But in terms of talent and maybe taking the offense to the next level, you do feel optimistic coming out of spring that maybe this Indiana offense can continue to evolve and get even better and a little bit more explosive here in 2025. All right, let's do some quick portal updates here. Again, the spring portal's open. Last time any player can enter the portal while being eligible for 2025. 2 names I want to bring up here, Chip, really, really quickly here. Number 1, Syracuse or former Syracuse wide receiver Trevor Pena. Why he's, I think, important here is because he's one of the most talented receivers in the transfer portal in this window. And there's some Big Ten ties to the former Syracuse receiver who was an all-ACC selection in 2024 and at 84 catches. This guy's produced. He could feel like he's a plug-and-play kind of guy. He visited Penn State last week, did not sign, and he's scheduled this week to visit UCLA and USC. So this is a guy that is highly sought after in the transfer portal here in this window where not as many talented players have entered compared to the winter portal back in December and January. But this is a guy, if he can land in the Big Ten, you got to feel really good, especially if you're UCLA. We just talked about before, when you get Nico Iamaleava coming in there, Well, you lose 4 of your top 5 receivers. You can find some money and get all of a sudden Pena, who's been a reliable player for Syracuse, to come in here pair with Nico. I feel like you almost have to do it if you're UCLA. Almost outbid everyone else. Just because you make this move for Nico, you almost kind of got to go all in now and give him a chance to succeed.
Well, let me take it from the Penn State perspective, though. The athletic director at Penn State, Pat Kraft, said during the winter that they're not done adding yet at that position, almost hinting as if there's another move coming at wide receiver for James Franklin. And Penn State already brought in Devontae Ross from Troy, who adds a lot of speed to that offense. Kyron Hudson, who's had experience playing in big games at USC, adds some size and length to the wide receiver position. And then who else is going to step up? Is it going to be a Liam Clifford in the slot? Is it going to be Caden Saunders? Guys who have been veterans and around, who have had some opportunities. Saunders has battled injury. Or is it going to be a younger guy like a Peter Gonzalez or a Tysier Denmark who showed his speed last year? So it feels like there's still a position available there to compete at Penn State and be a step right in and maybe even be a number 1 right away. So it feels like that could be the natural home too, just being 3 hours down the road from Syracuse. That's the perspective I take on it here. But this is a guy, as you said, who to any of those offenses you mentioned would be a huge addition in a spring portal window where there aren't a lot, as you've discussed, not a lot of big guys that move the needle. So who is trying to pry this wide receiver away from the orange?
Who? I cracked me up. That was funny. A little owl visiting the pod. So that's a guy to keep an eye on.
I'll keep this podcast moving.
I don't get the reference.
I'll keep this podcast moving.
Smooth.
Oh boy.
Smooth. I like that. Brian Tripp with the puns. All right. So a guy that is no longer in the portal, but is landing in the Big Ten, former Ferris State offensive lineman Bryce George lands at Iowa. And again, while there are not a lot of big time, I think, impact players in the spring portal, this is one of the few that I think you could see have a big impact right away. He will be a 2025 starter. Most likely looks like he'll slide into left tackle for the Hawkeyes. But his story is incredible, Tripp. This is a guy that in 2020 was recruited as a defensive tackle, was a 2-star guy. Then somehow switched over to like a hybrid running back tight end role. I don't know if he's like Kyle Juszczyk, that. But this guy's 6'5", 315, somehow was playing running back before switching over to offensive line, was a D2 All-American at Ferris State, 2-time All-Conference selection here as well. So this guy's played a lot of football. He was on one of the best teams in Division II, produced at a high level. And for his experience, you see his size. That's a 6'5", 315. That's a Big Ten tackle right there. You got to feel really good if you're Iowa about finding a guy that should be able to block Mark Gronowski's blind spot here in 2025. That's a really solid pickup there by Iowa.
Yeah, and a really cool story. And the last one that I noticed in the portal, Penn State linebacker Tamir Robinson transferring in conference to UCLA or USC, I should say. USC. We talk too much about UCLA. I can't believe we're talking so much about UCLA, but USC expected to get that linebacker. Penn State a little thin at linebacker going into 2025. So who are some of the guys that are going to emerge there? And this is a guy who has experience, who is probably going to be the 2-3 linebacker at Penn State this year. That's a big pickup for USC as they look to strengthen that defense for D'Anton Lynn.
And obviously, unlike the SEC, you can transfer in conference to the Big Ten while also being eligible here in 2025. So again, the portal closes on Friday, at least in terms of entering the portal. You can make decisions, not by Friday. You can wait a little bit, but we should get at least the biggest names and the most impactful names in the portal have a decision by Friday or the weekend. So next time we do chat with you, we'll be able to kind of close a book on the spring portal and have a really, really good idea of what rosters will look like here going into 2025. All right, Tripp, this is interesting. You showed this to me, and there's been a lot of discussion, right, about the college football playoff format, seedings, how many teams should be included. After this upcoming season, now the slate is wiped blank in terms of what the format will look like. We've had the 12-team model thrown out there. We've had a 14-team model with automatic qualifiers filled in as well. But I want to read you this idea, and this was reported by Heather Dennis of ESPN, who does a great job and is really insightful about these college football playoff format meetings. The leaders of the college football playoff are meeting this week in Texas to discuss former formats. And Heather Dennis reported this week, and I'll read what she said. Quote, "One possibility in terms of a format, which could be viewed as a compromise, is having conferences earn automatic bids through their play each season. A model in which each Power 4 league can earn guaranteed spots through a combination of its team's overall records and maybe even TV ratings, according to a source, could be presented. The highest ranked conferences would earn the most automatic bids. Now, Trip, we are determining playoff teams by how many people are watching their games.
It would be a really, really bad precedent, but which two conferences draw the highest ratings? The Big Ten and the SEC. And if they're trying to leverage how to get the most teams in to represent those conferences, of course it's a ploy that they're going to put into this window. So are they the most successful? Are they the best leagues? Possibly. I think it would be a horrible precedent to set, but to even see that, and I don't think that would ever come to fruit. It would be a dangerous precedent to set, but with TV networks controlling those leagues and the TV networks controlling the college football playoff, does it surprise me? Unfortunately, no.
I think there's no chance the TV ratings aspect ever gets implemented or is a real thing. There's no way.
But I don't want to say no way on that one.
Come on. You're telling me you have to be sweating Nielsen's release rankings on like Tuesday to see how many people watched Michigan versus Indiana, and then juxtaposing that to how many people watched Alabama versus Tennessee?
No, because it wouldn't be about the Big Ten and the SEC. It would just be about, so many people. But this is where Colorado finally would have a chance to get to the playoff.
Those clicks would pay off for Deion Sanders. Maybe he's playing the long game after all. I had an idea this is what was going to happen. And that's why, it's all about clicks. But like the other thing, though, I want to mention, really, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, I want to ask you a question first.
Sure.
I have an important question to ask here. Whose number is going to be retired next in college football?
Can Deion retire his own number? Can you just put Coach Prime on the stadium? Because I think if they go 7-5 this year and make the Las Vegas Bowl, I think you can see Deion Sanders' name up in the stadium next. Why not? How about Shiloh?
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. You're going to say something I think important.
A little serious here, I will say. Because the other, outside of TV ratings, the other aspect of just like looking at a conference's overall record in terms of trying to determine who should get the most bids, I think it's also a horrible idea. Because you know what that does, Trip? That incentivizes teams to play 0 tough marquee non-conference games. Because now if you're just going to judge on the record and say, okay, what's the overall conference record?
This is a big play tough. Aren't they already incentivized to not play in marquee non-conference games?
I mean, I personally don't believe so, because now you can lose 2 games and still make the playoff.
No. Yeah, but
why would
you
you can lose 2 games like Ohio State did and still win a national title. So why not play a tough non-conference game?
No. Hold on. You are off base on this. Yeah, you can lose 2 games and make the playoff, but if you're guaranteed 3 non-conference wins, teams are not given playoff spots based on the quality of their wins. Teams are given playoff spots based on the quantity of their losses. That is it. Undefeated teams are in. 1-loss teams are in. 2-loss teams might be in. 3-loss teams, they're not putting a 3-loss team in over a 1-loss team because their losses were Texas and Ohio State. They're not. So, no. Why would you schedule anyone in your non-conference when you're already going to play? Let's just take Big Ten as an example. If you're Penn State and you're already going to play Oregon at Beaver Stadium, at Ohio State, at Iowa, home against Nebraska, Indiana, why the hell would you schedule Clemson or Texas or Bama in non-conference? It's just another opportunity to lose. You're not a win against those teams or a loss against one of those teams isn't canceling out, for lack of a better term, your other results. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to how many games you win and how many games you lost. And until that model changes, until the structure changes, there is no incentive, 0 incentive, unless you're in like this head-to-head unless you're in some wild tiebreaker, you're trying to, but they beat them. It's not worth the risk for a team that is so good, that's so good already, that you're only going to lose 2 games. So why risk losing a third and knocking yourself out? No.
Look at it from the other perspective.
You're
get a win.
That perspective.
You.
It doesn't catapult you. It doesn't.
Yes, it does.
It just makes another challenge. It doesn't catapult you. How does it catapult you?
If Ohio State beats Texas week number 1, you're telling me that doesn't give them confidence to carry through the rest of the season versus they just played Miami, the Little Sisters of the Poor, and Appalachian State? Like, winning a big marquee non-conference game, I think, does translate into success moving forward. It can inspire confidence, give you the thought of, hey,
if they lose that game, how many Big Ten games can they lose?
Probably 1.
If they beat the Little Sisters of the Poor and Toledo, how many Big Ten games can they lose?
I mean, I will say every year is different in the sense of
no, it's not.
Who's left at the end? What's the resume look like? Last year, we were talking about a 3-loss Alabama team and what is it, a 2-loss SMU team?
And
SMU got in. SMU got in.
Yeah.
You are correct in that aspect for 2024. But every year is different. 2025 and the teams that we're going to be arguing about are not going to be the same as 2024. Maybe we could be arguing about 4-loss teams soon.
Why do you think the SEC only plays 8 conference games?
I get why they do it, and I think it's ridiculous.
If you're a Big Ten team and you're playing 9 conference games already, and I'll use that example again, Penn State has Ohio State and Oregon. If they lose both those games, they can still be in. But if they have to then couple that up, they're already going to Kinnick, already have Indiana, already have Nebraska, and if you have to couple that up with a trip to Coral Gables to take on Miami, like, why? You wouldn't.
Are you right?
I think your viewpoint is very idealistic. Ultimately, is it better for college football and fans? Yeah, no kidding. But it doesn't change how teams are viewed based on the quantity of losses until the system change, format changes, the committee changes. Like, even this past year, they weren't putting 3-loss Alabama in over 1-loss Indiana. Maybe they had an argument. I don't know, but we don't know. Like, if you beat up on bad teams, you get in. You just do. There's 12 spots. This isn't college basketball. We're not going to their net rating. We're not going to their RPI. You don't play 30 games.
And maybe that's a bigger discussion of what, instead of the format changing, maybe the committee should be changing. What we actually look at should be changing, because I would agree. They're still looking at the win-loss column does not tell the story of a team season. At least right now in the interim, you do see, right, Ohio State still playing Texas, Michigan playing Oklahoma. Some of these big marquee conference games are at least on the schedule.
And to your point, not all losses are created. Like, okay, Alabama had 3 losses, but look at some of their losses, right? Like, the Oklahoma one was bad. But if you have 3 losses and your losses are at Ohio State, at Notre Dame, and then at home against Texas in conference, then okay, maybe it's a little bit different conversation than losing to Vandy and Oklahoma, who are at the bottom of your league. Like, that's where I can agree with you in some ways. But until that change, like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
And I think if this is true in terms of what they're proposing of overall conference records to determine how many automatic bids are given out each year, then you are really then driving it home of there is no reason to play any of these big games. You play 3 cupcakes, and you just do the numbers game, right? Big 10, 18 teams, 3 non-conference games. Oh, shoot. I don't know why I did this. 54? 18 times 3, 54? 54 wins right there that you can have, because the conference records, I know this is a big time in SEC basketball, the conference records strip are going to be 500.
Really?
You're going to win a certain amount, and you're going to lose. I know. There's a lot of people that were surprised to hear that the conference record evens out in the end. Who would have thought? So it is going to come down to basically who plays the softest and who has the most non-conference games and wins. And I would agree. Yeah, you're probably incentivized now already. But if this new idea is implemented, then you are really, then there's zero reason. I'm holding out hope that there's some reason to play these non-conference games. You put conference records as a determiner for automatic qualifiers in the number, then there's zero, all that hope, that little bit that's left that I hold on to. I hold on with a tight grip, as you can tell.
Yeah.
That just goes out the window.
You have better hair than Carl Ravitch.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. Yeah, I'm not Carl's got to go back to math school on that one there. Let's go back to elementary school and do some quick addition and subtraction.
He said it was a joke. He said it was a joke.
Well, how many times have you said something was a joke that you've gotten criticized for publicly? I've done it plenty of times. Oh, I was just joking. I didn't mean that, UCLA was going to go in the national title this year. I was just kidding. I was kidding.
Some of the people that replied to our posts about Nico Iamaleava, did I say his name right? I have to look at it. When the name is on the screen, I can pronounce it. I don't have the name on there. It's very phonetic when it's up there. But some people that had replied to some of your posts about that from the Still Enrolled podcast, and the USC people lately have been all over us. Someone said, I know ball. And then there's another guy who said, you can tell that this guy covers pucks. I do appreciate the feedback from our social media audience.
Good and bad. We're here for it.
They take your tweets out of context. They don't watch the actual. You can't get the full crux of the conversation from just the tweet, and even spend the minute to watch the clip you post. And then if you're still curious, click on the whole podcast.
That is you just opened up a door and Pandora's box, if you will, of bigger issues in society. Bigger issues with social media. No one reads, no one listens, no one wants to actually get the full picture before they comment. Is Nico Iamaleava the best quarterback in the Big Ten? Oh, you idiot. Why would you say that? We didn't say that. We didn't say that. Especially when you have your name at Ryan Hickey 3? Nailed it.
It is?
Nailed it.
And at B-Trip Tweet. We have our names. We're not at Bruin Fan 1545 with 10 followers commenting.
And an egg face.
We're not at Luck of Irish 12. Give me a break. We're not at Secretariat 10. Okay, cool. Get out of your mom's basement. Woo! Oh, Trip, you were on one today, man. You brought the comedy. I like this. This is like a trip after dark here during lunchtime. This is fun. Yeah, you got to bottle this up. Encouraging me to take my shirt off when we first started the podcast, but we paused that and hit re-record.
Well, when you're wearing a cutoff, sweatshirt that allows the guns to be shown, I figured a comment has to be made.
I like the short sleeve. Now, people are very mixed on them, like the short sleeve sweatshirts. I think it's good because still gives you a little weight, breathable. I like them.
I do like them. I actually would like one, to be honest with you. I don't have any.
I actually just bought a pack of 3. Now they're like a light pack of 3. I got them off TikTok Shop. Have you ever bought off TikTok Shop?
I have, actually. And I bought 2 things so far, both sweatshirts.
Yep.
And I would say so far, I have no complaints about them.
I know what you got. You got a Chapel Roan sweatshirt off TikTok Shop.
No, I did not. I got a Penn State retro crew neck, and I got a 2-pack American flag knitted crew neck. And both, so far, all 3 actually holding up. I got them last year. They have not disintegrated, which that was a real thought of that happening. The quality is actually way better than I anticipated for the price that you're paying. I would say so far, so good with TikTok Shop. I think they have not led you astray or bamboozled you.
Weren't you recently doing karaoke of some sort?
That video I posted for my girlfriend's birthday was back on Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Old video that did not see the light of day until it was time to embarrass someone that I love a lot. So I figured let's put it up there. Pink Pony Club. No, sorry, Hot to Go. Great. Let me tell you, the crowd was into it.
Can you just give us a little snippet of what it was like?
I'm gonna fling that idea. I will not sing for you on the pod. Not today.
Smooth transition.
There we go. All right, let's have some fun here that does not involve singing because that would drive the audience away without a doubt. I'll leave the singing to Chapel Roan. But CBS Sports Trip unveiled some ideas Nebraska has. They are going with the trend of moving away from their spring football actual game, but still needed ideas to bring 80,000 people to Lincoln on a Saturday in the middle of April. So I want to play a quick game with you here of spring it or fling it. These are ideas Nebraska had to replace their actual spring game with in the hopes of still getting fans to come out for a nice weekend in Lincoln. So idea number 1, alumni flag football game. You into that? Would you, as a fan, spring it, you'll be there, or fling it, no thanks, I'm out?
You do know I'm probably going to say fling it to almost every one of these, right?
Even an alumni. See, I'm in for spring it. I'm in for the alumni. I think that'd be fun. Get some of the legends back. I mean, the game's itself not going to be very cool, but who cares? Maybe do a little meet and greet afterwards. Like, you bring back some nostalgia of some legends, and Nebraska's got a bunch of them.
Here's my thing, and maybe I'm jaded. Maybe I'm a cynic. I think we are so inundated with events, sports, there's so many different things that capture our attention these days, or are grabbed to capture our attention these days.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many activities, content, events, people asking for money. I love tradition of spring football, as it was a practice, a game, a scrimmage. You bring people back, you tailgate. Here's a chance to come back to a college town, hit up your favorite bars, restaurants, see the people that you spend those fall Saturdays with, sitting next to in your seats in the stands, get a glimpse of what the teammate looked like, get a look at Bryce Underwood for the first time. Like, I think that is cool. To make spring football into a Pro Bowl of sorts, just because, we've always had something, but we don't want to play football anymore, but we need to bring people to town because these college towns, you're probably not going through this as much in Columbus, Ohio. You're probably not going through this in Miami, Florida. You're probably not going but
LA
when
is
you're
fine,
in Ames, Iowa, Los Angeles, like USC, but when you're in Ames, Iowa, and State College, Pennsylvania, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama, across the Big Ten in Bloomington, Indiana, like with Kurt Signetti and all the attention that program has. Cheapening it just to check a box or fulfill a quota. Like, universities build their fundraising weekends around this in the spring, but just to check a box feels insincere and ingenuine. Like, I get it. I get the reasons behind it. I get why you do it. But the whole crap about, I can't televise the game because people are going to see my players. Like, I mean, I've said that for weeks. It's a load of crap. I think this should I'm fine with all these events that you're going to fling at me, but I'm going to shoo them away, because ultimately it comes down to people want to come and get their first look at the team and the first look at the new coordinators or coaches or players. All this other stuff's great, and it's a great way to bring people into the community and get them around your program and sell your program and have a chance to, families can experience things they can't afford during a regular season when it's a hot ticket. But ultimately, nothing's a real substitute, and it's all just way too gimmicky for me to feel like we have to check a box.
I agree with you. I'd rather have a spring game over anything else in general.
Yep.
Now, I will say I do view these weekends as more as a reason to go versus I'm actually excited to see the game. I've been to a few Penn State spring games in my student career and even post-grad. I've never gone thinking, I can't wait to see so-and-so play. Because even 10 years ago, when the game was never even a thought to be hidden or watered down, you're still not seeing a lot in general. It's still. I feel like it's more about the atmosphere and bringing back and just kind of getting football back on the brain versus I can't wait to see how the second team defensive line goes against the first team offensive line and see if we can have some good depth here. I guess I never looked at it as actually getting anything football wise, but more using it as an excuse to tailgate, see people again, go to campus you haven't been for a while. That's how I look at it. So, but with that said, I think some of these ideas, I would be into an alumni flag football game. I'm not going back for that specifically, but going back and actually we could see some of the guys we used to watch when we were there and some legends of the program. I think is intriguing and interesting.
Have you watched the Pro Bowl the last couple of years?
I refuse.
Yeah, exactly. That's what this feels like. It's not a good product. They're just doing it because they feel obligated, or their TV contractually obligated to one or the other to do it. That's what this feels like. If you want to do a concert, cool. If you want to do competitions around the game, a little cool. But I just think it's all so I love the creativity. I love the mark. Like, I know this is coming from like athletic directors and visitors bureaus and the town and coaches. How do we drum up interest with our program at the end of a spring ball? We're used to having it, but it's also gimmicky. Like, okay, we don't want to have spring football anymore. Then we don't have spring football anymore. Move on.
So you're not intrigued and you're not captured to go to watch a soccer field goal
go ahead.
competition versus a football penalty kick. You're out on that.
Read through the list. I was just precluding my answers.
No worries. So what are the ideas? Soccer field goals, which I guess soccer players kick field goals, and football players have penalty kicks. You're out on that idea.
Who cares?
I am as well. BMX bike exhibition. Is that tickling the fancy for you?
That's great if it's in the parking lot before the game, then you go into the game.
How about a concert?
Depends who the act is.
I also would agree. Now you're getting a big act. I think you have to get a big act.
But then it's more about the concert than then just have a concert.
Chaperone and Lincoln. I don't think you need a spring football game beforehand to get the people juiced up.
Like, but Nebraska had a concert that coincided with their volleyball match that was outside that drew 90,000 people.
And if I'd ask you what was the bigger draw there, the concert or the match, I'd probably say it's a match.
I think those two played perfectly together, honestly. It was an awesome event. They killed it.
I think this could be an intrigue for a lot of people. I'm not sure how many people would come out just for this, but I think this is interesting. Tours of the Osborne Legacy Complex, which is a Huskers' new training facility, not open to the public. This is basically a one-time only thing. You want to see the inside of the facility. Here's your shot this weekend to do it. I like that idea. And that honestly would
charging.
I don't know. $10. I'm assuming it's going to be near the price of a spring game ticket.
Aren't spring games usually free?
It depends where you go. I think Michigan's was $5 or $10. Indiana's, I think, charged as well. Like everything I've seen price-wise, it's $20 and below, $15 and below. For $15, for $10, if you can get a tour of a facility you otherwise have zero chance of seeing at any other point, that would drive me to go. I'd be intrigued by that.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, I think most colleges, universities, programs, coaches, I don't think they're going to open their facility up.
Well, that's a bigger discussion, and that's a giant hurdle to clear. I would agree with that thought, because a lot of fans are going to take videos of that, and I don't think they want that out there. But I think that's kind of the idea of you got to give someone a novel idea that you can't get any other time but this weekend, and that's why this next idea, I think it should be automatic for any spring game, no matter what the format is. Pre and post game team coach autographs. I think that should just be a spring staple, no matter what you do. Coaches, players. Get up close and personal more than you otherwise normally would. That feels like a prerequisite.
I agree, but I thought you were going to read the next one on the list when you were describing what must be a prerequisite.
Well, you want butts in the seats. This may be a prerequisite. A sorority tug of war trip. That will get some people talking. That'll get some people in the seats. That's it. You're going to go quiet now? No more jokes? Hey, one person I know would be out there. Person you referenced earlier in the pod. You'd appreciate that. But that was an idea by Nebraska, a legitimate idea, a sorority tug of war to bring the out-of-towners into Lincoln for a weekend to not watch spring football, but watch A.E. Pie and Alpha Phi go at it in a tug of war. Oh, boy. How about the fastest student on campus race? Would you be intrigued by that, Trip? Are you going to get in the stadium to watch freshmen, seniors run 100 yards?
Actually, I would be curious to see how fast some were. That's actually not a bad one.
I am unaware. I will put up my hand here in terms of ignorance. I'm not sure if Nebraska is planning on changing out the turf in the offseason. I'm assuming they are, because this next idea is to have fans in the stadium come down after the spring showcase and cut out a section of turf. I guess the White Sox version of Disco Demolition Night here. Bring your own scissors and cut up the end zone to bring it home.
This sounds really smart. Let's admit 30,000 people into our stadium with a sharp metal object.
With scissors and this is the only time of the year you can come in with objects that are sharp, that are dangerous. We want you to bring the sharpest objects you can. Box cutters allowed. Scissors allowed. Let's go.
Wait, while you read, I'm going to get something for our audience. Keep going.
Okay. So Other ideas, and again, these sound like maybe onion article ideas. These are legitimate ideas that Nebraska had to try to get people to come to their spring game. Tractor pulls. Okay, maybe, more physical competition. They didn't say who's actually participating in the tractor pull. I'd hope it'd be no students or no athletes, I should say. Maybe fans are out there trying to test their strength. A pancake feed on the concourse. Go have some Nebraska pancakes sitting on a concourse. Can't really do that during the regular season. A media/celebrity flag football game. I'd rather watch.
Have you watched the celebrity softball game after the home run derby? Yeah.
I have not. I've not watched that. I've not watched a celebrity basketball game during the All-Star break.
I think this has gone off the hinge, off the rails. This podcast is kind of
unhinged. Can I? There's one more. There's one more that this cracks me up here. Bring in a side or a large flag that covers the entire field and a live eagle. That's going to get people in the seats.
Yeah.
100-yard, 100 flag.
To wrap this up, and we'll have our draft podcast with Emory Hunt coming out later this week. And this was actually a lot of fun today. I think we did make a lot of really good points just before we went off the rails here at the end. It's just that's spring football. That's college football. How appropriate. What I wanted to get up and get, because you're talking about sharp metal objects, was all I can think about as you're saying that, come down and get a piece of your turf, is in case someone ever breaks into my house.
Oh my God.
I have a machete that I keep under my bed. So I went across the room to get my machete, and I could just see Nebraska's fans coming into the stadium. For our YouTube audience, they're being really treated right now. But I could see Nebraska fans coming into the stadium. I don't own a gun, but I do have a machete.
I have so many questions, so is that's not a gift. Like, you actually bought this machete with the sole intent of self-defense?
Actually, it was from like a white elephant.
What?
Which was just kind of like a fun. It was you're supposed to bring like a gag gift, but ultimately I sought this out because I knew I had the perfect use for it. So, all right. So coming up later this week on Wednesday, we will have our draft preview podcast with Emory Hunt from CBS Sports, talk about the top prospects 2025 coming out of the Big Ten for the NFL draft. And then also talk about the 2026 prospects, an early look ahead. This was a lot of fun today. We discussed, obviously, going through that situation that UCLA and Tennessee have at their quarterback position, the spring portal window, spring games that are wrapping up, and the spring schedule continues this weekend, including the game that I'll be at and covering, whatever it may look like on Saturday, Penn State's blue-white game at Beaver Stadium, which is a 2:00 start. Ryan, always great to be with you here on the Still Enrolled podcast. Remember, you can download this podcast, listen to this podcast wherever you do get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube as well. We will talk to you next time on Still Enrolled, a Big Ten football podcast.